good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mary Nolmeyer, and I'm the Director of Finance, and I also have Meera Patel, our chapter accountant, with us. As we announced a few months ago, APWA has moved investment firms. Previously, we were using Merrill Lynch with the broker style, and now we've moved over to DeMayo Schneider, and we are having this webinar today to introduce you to their offerings. Many of you have investments with Merrill Lynch, and some have made investments with your own firms. We're not mandating that you use DeMayo and Schneider, but we think it would be beneficial to you. They have a lot of nonprofit and association experience. And I'm going to turn it over to Bill and Trey for them to explain their products and offerings.
Great. Thanks very much, Mary. Hi, everyone. This is Bill Fisher with DeMayo Schneider and Associates. We're going to talk about this kind of what we think is a unique investment solution that's low cost, simple, and we think accomplishes pretty much everything you need to accomplish as far as your responsibilities as a fiduciary to the assets that you oversee. So, Trey, if we could move along here. So for those of you that we did not meet back in January when we were in Kansas City, this is what we look like. I am the lead consultant for our relationship with APWA. My colleague Trey Alcott is with me on the phone today as well. He is a co-consultant on this account. So I thought I'd start out by just telling you a little bit about the firm. Just starting off here, we were founded back in 1995. The firm's based in Chicago, Illinois. We're getting ready to celebrate 25 years in business coming up next year. We're very excited about that. Trey and I are based in one of the satellite offices in Washington, D.C., and we pretty much focus on working with nonprofit organizations, and that includes trade and professional associations, charitable groups, private schools, hospitals, and so forth. We've been doing that for a long time. The firm has a little over $80 billion in assets under advisement. The bulk of that is with institutional clients. Which includes both corporate retirement plans and our work with nonprofit organizations that I mentioned. We're very proud of the fact that we have a 96% client retention rate, so our clients tend to be pretty loyal to us. And then finally, we've got a 30-person plus research staff in Chicago, and they produce a lot of intellectual capital. And that's things like newsletters, articles, white papers regarding investments and what nonprofit fiduciaries should be looking in. So it's kind of topical, relevant information. And we produce that on a regular basis. And as a client, you would have access to that. You would get regular emails as those publications come out, help keep you informed. Our next slide, a bit of a brag page here. We are ranked in the top 20 of registered investment advisors in the U.S. We're also in the top 40 for worldwide consultants as well. So now I want to get into a little bit introducing this investment program to you and the way that it works. So typically, after making an introduction, we'll spend some time with you over the phone, just talking about and getting an understanding of your specific needs and what your goals are and objectives with the funds that you're investing. If you feel like you need maybe a little bit of a direction, we have access to an investor questionnaire that's a bit of a survey that asks you about your specific investment preferences and feelings, and that helps us get a better flavor of what type of risk objectives you have, as well as what type of return you're seeking out. And all this leads to helping you select an appropriate portfolio for your particular chapter. We also provide you with a written investment policy statement, and then we regularly help you monitor the portfolio's performance as well as that of the underlying asset managers. So all this helps you check off all the boxes on your fiduciary checklist. So as a fiduciary, things like you need to be acting in the manner of a prudent person. You need a written investment policy statement, and you need to make sure you're following it. You need a diversified set of investment options, and you also need to monitor that on a regular basis, looking at results, overall investment results, and then the results with the individual investment vehicles within the portfolio. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Trey. He's going to discuss the transition process of the program and some more specific information that you should be interested in.
Great, thank you so much, Bill, and good afternoon, everyone. So this slide outlines the transition process. Bill talked about the sort of the consultation process, and that's step one here on the slide. Once that's finished, step two would be completing paperwork, so contract and new account documents. Step three is the transfer of assets. Step four would be the investment into the appropriate model portfolio. And at the bottom shows the approximate time, which is about 2 to 4 weeks from beginning to end. The next slide, slide 7, shows the variety of investment solutions available to your chapter. So I'll start at the bottom. You have 4 different portfolios: income, conservative growth, moderate growth, and growth, going from risk averse to taking on more risk. So you'll see at the top some of the highlights of the program. The minimum account is $10,000. It's really attractive, and all-in costs around 1%. As Bill mentioned earlier, there are performance reports which we generate and send to you quarterly. You have access to our thought leadership, the white papers, conference calls that we'll have from time to time, and again, all to fulfill your fiduciary duty. The next slide shows the performance of the different model portfolios. You'll see this is all through the end of last year. So you'll see a year to date, which is the same as 1 year, and then you'll see 2, 3, 5, 7, 10-year numbers. And to the right, you'll see the different calendar year returns for the portfolios. Last year, we had a tough end to the year for the markets, but the first quarter has been quite stellar. The markets were up over 10%. So we should have the updated performance numbers for the first quarter in the next couple of days, which I'll share with Mary and anyone else who's interested. So the next slide shows the fees for the different portfolios. You'll notice that the advisory fee is the same for all of the different model portfolios. The investment management fees will vary slightly. Custody, there's zero cost for the custodial costs. Transaction costs are very minimal. There's no commissions and there's no other costs. So if you look all the way on the right-hand side, you'll see the total all-in cost for the 4 different portfolios. Bill mentioned earlier about reporting. So Charles Schwab is the custodian on the account, and they will provide the account holdings and also any transaction. In any transactions that are made, you'll receive notification from Charles Schwab. I just mentioned earlier that we will provide performance reports on a quarterly basis, which will outline the performance of your model portfolio versus the appropriate benchmarks. You'll have access to quarterly webinars, which will highlight performance for each of the models. They'll recap the financial market and talk about any rebalancing that was made over the last quarter, if any was done. And then lastly, as I just mentioned, access to our thought leadership, excuse me. One question that comes up quite a bit is, how will we get access to our money? So should your chapter need to withdraw funds for any reason, please let us know the amount to be withdrawn, the appropriate place to send the money, and then we can also set up an ACH instruction so that we can just transfer money from Charles Schwab to your chapter's bank account. One thing I will note is that this process takes a couple business days. I'd say between 2 to 4 business days to complete. And that's kind of it. So if you have any questions, our contact information is listed here. Feel free to reach out via email or give us a call. And with that, I will see if there's any questions.
And you can enter your questions in the chat box or just ask your question. And while we're waiting for questions to come in, I just wanted to reiterate that the fees that Trey went over on page 9 are the total fees. A lot of other like investments, there's hidden fees, and the fees are taken out of your investments proceeds, so you don't necessarily see the fees. And this is the grand total. There will be no hidden fees.
Yeah, and this is Bill again. Just to point out on the fees, it's interesting to note that the most conservative portfolio is actually the most expensive by a slight margin here, and fees actually go down. I will tell you the reason for that is as we add more equity investments, we typically use more index funds here. So the more fixed income where we typically use actively managed funds, so it will be slightly more expensive, but that's the reason that as we go down from income to the growth model, the portfolio expenses actually decrease.
Okay. So
I do see
did you guys, Trey, do you see the questions coming through?
I do. So the first question is asking about, is there a fee for withdrawing from the account? The answer to that is no. There's no fee if you need to withdraw money from your account. Second question is, can we get a copy of this presentation? The answer is absolutely. I'm happy to send it, or Mary, if you want to send it, either way.
Yeah, we can send it out, and then we'll get it posted on the chapter leader website also.
So the third question, again, relates to penalty or fee for withdrawing. The answer, again, to reiterate, is no. The next question is, what are the underlying investments within each of the model portfolios? Each of the model portfolios are comprised of mutual funds. Depending on the model, those will vary, and I'm happy to, whoever sent that question, I'm happy to talk to you about the different underlying holdings. I don't see any other questions.
Yeah, as far as the underlying investments go, we can come up with a slide that will tell you what each of the underlying investments is in each of those model portfolios there. For this presentation, we just didn't want to get into the weeds on that, but we're happy to provide that information.
Another investment or another question just came through.
So the question is the fee a one-time fee at deposit? I'm not sure.
So the way the fees work is they are deducted from the account on a quarterly basis. So it's an annual fee rate that you're seeing on the screen here, but that's prorated quarterly and deducted directly from the account. And yes, you'll have complete access to Charles Schwab, your account information at Charles Schwab, so you can run snapshots, see transactions, and get account balance updates and download monthly statements and so forth.
So there's another question about specific term length. The answer to that is no. And then there's another question asking about front load fees. The answer to that is no. We use all institutional share mutual funds, so there's no front load to any of the mutual funds.
And then somebody's asking about how accounts are titled. So I believe they would be titled APWA/Chicago branch or Chicago chapter, KC Metro, something like that. And then there would be authorized people who have access to do the transactions.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Another question about tax information. So that will all be produced by Charles Schwab. You'll get a 1099 during tax season. Those are usually available around middle of February.
Mm-hmm.
All good questions. Any further questions?
Okay. Does anybody have any additional questions?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, well, if anything comes to mind after you hang up the phone, you feel free to send an email to either Trey or myself, and we'll be happy to answer any other questions you have. Or if you're ready to get started, again, just let us know. Contact us either by phone or email, and we're happy to start the process.
And there was one last question that came in about the minimum account. Can money be withdrawn to a balance below 10,000?
Yes. So the minimum is 10,000 to start. If it drops below that because you've used some of the money, that's okay.
Any last questions? Going, gone. Thanks for everybody for participating. And as mentioned, if you have questions, contact Bill or Trey or Mira and I. And there is one more question. Is there a minimum fee?
Trey, I don't believe so. I think the fee is what's stated out there,
exactly.
and regardless of what the account size is.
Correct.
All right, thank you. And as Rhonda mentioned earlier, we did record this, so it will be out on the Chapter